A 12-team Superflex mock here at EstablisherRun.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, here today with our friends from Underdog, Josh Norris, Hayden Winks, and Hayden. You are on the clock at 102. What initially goes through your mind whenever you're opening a Superflex draft?
Well, to me, I think you just have to look at the quarterback projections. And right now, I think there's like a clear top four. I think Burrow and Mahomes kind of in their own tier. And then it's a humongous, I think, tier 3 or tier 4. So I would rather gobble up Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. So when you send this link over and I got to choose my spot, I want one of the top 2 picks, and then I'll figure out who falls to me in rounds 2, 3.
Josh, this is with the settings, 2 wide receivers, 1 flex, and then a super flex. If someone has a 3 wide receiver league, I think they could go Jamar Chase 101 overall. But I say that because I feel like you have the toughest spot here in the middle of the first round, unless one of the big 4 quarterbacks falls to you.
Exactly. I think there's 4 quarterbacks. I would put then Burrow in his own tier. And then after that, I would say there's even a drop off to Patrick Mahomes. So the first 3 picks are the easiest here. I understand what you're saying, Daigle, that there might be some decision between Jamar Chase, but man, if I have a chance to get, to me, Jalen Hurts at this spot, I'm just going to take it.
I believe there was an easier argument to make before 2020 when we didn't have Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts owning.
Just 6 years ago.
Just 6 years ago, yeah. Owning the top 3, and now with Jaden Daniels owning the top 4 positions.
Yeah.
But yes, with the rushing quarterbacks, Josh Allen, for example, top 2 in every single season since 2021. Now the quarterbacks box out everyone else. And we get into that tier, Hayden, where, like Josh said, Joe Burrow by himself. But that also seems like it could be the mistake we made with CJ Stroud last year and trying to elevate a non-rushing quarterback with elite draft capital.
I'm on team Joe Burrow still, though. I mean, this team's like going to be top 1 or top 2 in neutral pass rate. We know Joe Burrow's in the prime of his career. We know his 2 wide receivers are in the prime of his career. So, like, yeah, is he going to have the same exact season as last year? Probably not. But is he going to be probably the quarterback 5 or 6 this year? I would say probably so.
Daigle, to me, it's fascinating. And I just did a dynasty startup that is Superflex as well, that you're in the most difficult position, I feel like, because after these quarterbacks, it's not just, hey, do I want to start with a quarterback in round 1 or get one in round 2? It's also then playing, okay, how patient is the rest of the league going to be to get their second quarterback on top of it? So it's not just your decision-making for rounds 1 and round 2. If you avoid quarterback completely there, then you really are like, you don't know what type of room you're in. Are you in a room that then if I double up on a second quarterback, if Hayden does, then man, you're already in a massive, massive hole, because in this mock, there is no 3rd round return here.
And as you could tell, I then struggled with selection.
Yeah.
But with Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, and Derrick Henry there, I know Saquon Barkley, a lot of people don't put him in the same tier as Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to cross my fingers that one of that group comes back to me. Could do it incorrectly. But at the back end, to your point, with Joe Burrow gone, I do think then that next tier of quarterbacks, we all have different QB6s, for example.
Totally.
Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, and I understand all the arguments. I do think it becomes a significantly flat tier, though, where at the back end 100%. Of a Superflex, I am comfortable pushing the next group of quarterbacks and instead waiting on the guys we know will fall, like Dak Prescott, Drake May, the list goes on.
Exactly, Dagsy. Like Hayden and I have this conversation, it feels like every single episode right now with Patrick Mahomes, and I can totally paint the picture of him having a top 5 season at the position. At the same time, I can make an argument, maybe Hayden disagrees, I can make an argument that, maybe Bo Nix outscores him, or even Brock Purdy outscores Patrick Mahomes this year. So this is so much flatter that to me, it's a first half of the draft has a different strategy than the second half of this draft does too, and it's all dictated by the quarterback position.
For those that go ahead,
like just like what Josh was saying, though, you are at the mercy of it. So if you skip over
Right.
quarterbacks in rounds 1 and 2, you better feel pretty comfortable about it. But I do think like worst case, it'll be like Drake May and like Tua or something, which I think that it's probably pretty close. But I think that if you're picking your spot in Superflex, I would rather go for one of the elites. Because also that big tier that we're talking about in regular best ball drafts that goes like top 15-ish overall, and then it's like AJ Browns and those type, you're going to be able to get 2 of those guys at the 2-3 turn as well.
For those that missed it, there is a 2 QB mock with our friends from Roto World, Pat Doherty and Kyle Dvorak, on the channel now. And in that mock, we see quarterback both from the front end, not pressed, not pushed another round, waiting for it to come back. Whereas Pat, in the instance at 112, does wait till the 5th round for his quarterback. And it's a fun sample because you can see that you should get uncomfortable, really feeling like you're reaching for a quarterback, because if you allow it to go too far, then it will come back, Hayden, to that tier of Tua, even Jackson Dart. Again, if you push it way too far.
Dago, I'm at the 2-8 here. I would have loved Devon Achane or Derrick Henry to come back, and Puka Nacua. I mean, this is just an ideal spot. I get the 4th quarterback of 4, and then now I get my choice of Nico Collins or Brian Thomas Jr. or Drake London, or if I want to go running back, it could be Bucky Irving. I'm gonna go with Nico Collins here, Dago. Again, I think fantasy season's all about the narratives and stories you convince yourself of in August and July and June. In my head, I think there's a real possibility that Nico Collins has a legit shot of being a top 2 or 3 scorer at the position this year. I'm thrilled to get him this late in the 2nd round.
Do you have an opinion on where you prefer to draft in a regular 12-team league? Because
at the end,
as I do more 2QB and Superflex, I do think it's opposite. Whereas I can hammer one of these top 4 guys and then come back with an elite player like Nico Collins. Whereas in a regular 12-team 1 quarterback league, you can get these guys at the end instead.
100%. A regular redraft, I would want to be 10, 11, 12. In the Superflex leagues, I want to be a top 4 or top 5 selection and hope that the 4th or 3rd or 2nd pick or even 1st goes Jamar Chase, so I get one of those top 4 quarterbacks.
Hayden, I think one of the interesting decision points as you come across, you get Patrick Mahomes as your 2nd quarterback, but Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams around this range in the 3rd round, people will be questioning if they're drafting in the next couple of weeks, if they should be concerned with the Matthew Stafford back injury. Any thoughts there?
I think you should be concerned. I think I moved Puka like to the bottom of the tier. So like, for example, I have Nico Collins now ahead of Puka Nacua. That was not the case. I think that you could have made an argument that Puka Nacua can go like right next to like CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, like in that middle of that tier. And then I think that Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, you also have to push those guys down as well. I think if Matthew Stafford did miss time, I do think that Puka would be the most likely to survive just because of the way that they use him. But I would feel pretty suspect about that. So I just pushed all those guys to the bottom of their tier and just hope that like the Adam Schefter reporting is correct.
I could take Bo Nix here, by the way, and be the 2nd team with a 2nd quarterback like Hayden. But again, I really like and maybe this whole back half of the 1st round that didn't select quarterbacks are going to load up on quarterbacks here. But it's pretty flat to me, as we've discussed, from, I don't know, Drake May to Brock Purdy to Dak Prescott,
Justin
so on and
Fields,
so forth. So I'm going to be very balanced here and go either Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs. It's a really tough decision for me. They are back-to-back in my rankings. I'm going to go with JT, though. I mean, how he finished the year as running back 1, running back 1, running back 5. I do think that there are some maybe under-discussed offensive line questions that this team has, but JT is going to pound the rock for the Colts this year, that's for sure.
Him, as you said, Jacobs, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, and I personally put Amari and Hampton into that same group of running backs that would be drafted here. Yes, we will have to nitpick between them, but I do think they all belong in the same tier. Hayden, any thoughts on, actually, let me come back to you, Josh, on that, because Amari and Hampton in the next couple of weeks, if people are drafting, is going to be a key decision point for everyone, since we don't have an update on Najee Harris outside of, quote, he's walking laps around the training camp field right now. So what are you doing with Amari and Hampton?
It's a great question. By the time that this video comes out, we'll have a video on our channel about round 2 and round 3 and how we think it's being drafted, inappropriately is one way of putting it. I have Amari, I have so many running backs in that area where so many other people are taking wide receivers. Like in a 10 pick span, I have JT, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown. You skip down a couple spots, Amari and Hampton, Kenneth Walker III, Breece Hall, and then Kyron Williams after that. So I'm just loving these in redraft in your home leagues, round 2, 3 running backs that an underdog might go in round 4, round 5, all that stuff. And it's tough for me to decide between the two. If I realize and remember that this was a PPR league, maybe I would have gone Josh Jacobs instead of Jonathan Taylor, but I think it's okay.
I do think that the roster settings for Superflex does matter, because a lot of Superflex leagues go from 3 wide receivers down to 2 wide receivers, and that does negatively impact the position. So make sure there is a pretty substantial difference between a Superflex still with that 3rd wide receiver spot, or like in this setting where it's only 2 wide receiver spots, which I just think generally makes the running backs a little bit more valuable, even though this is PPR.
And if anyone were to see the rankings at establishrun.com, your rankings on Underdog and your videos, or even in this case, Sleeper ADP, the point we keep reiterating is how flat this next tier quarterback is.
Yep.
And it just differentiates mightily. And that's why I also then pushed it with George Kittle here, who my approach has been Trey McBride and George Kittle on a discount from Brock Bowers, thinking that either of them could be the tight end 1. And now I am going to select it. Maybe in my rankings, it could be Kyler Murray, but since I've already stacked up McCaffrey and Kittle, I'm just going to take Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I think it's really well executed by you. I did want to do one caveat, though, that this is industry people and then ETR Discorders. I do think that your regular Superflex leagues, there's going to be a run on quarterbacks. So don't just like copy paste some of the expert mock drafts for Superflex where we're willing to take on the risk. But I don't think that your college and high school buddies are going to be quite as likely to like wait until round 4 to get their quarterback 1.
If we're also talking about, the default rankings here, T. Higgins being behind Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson is quite uncomfortable for me. I would much rather have T. Higgins than some of those names.
I'm also offended that Justin Fields, you have to dig for him next to JJ McCarthy. Let's give some rushing
I don't know.
credit here.
I'm not sure, Daigle. Have you been reading the reports?
He's still going to run. We've never been worried about the arm. We just
I'm a
care
little
about his
bit
legs for
worried that
fantasy.
he can't run on the bench.
I don't think it's gotten that bad, unless we think Mason Taylor and maybe the Breece Hall injury all of a sudden.
Look at Z Newcomb right before me, going with a 3 running back approach. I was hoping for Josh Jacobs in that same slot.
Make him pay. Go quarterbacks here. Let's make him pay. Let's eliminate him.
This is a player that Hayden and I are going to talk. Well, I'm going to go Tyreek Hill here.
Okay.
As my second wide receiver. Do I want to take Breece Hall? It's full PPR. I'm going to go Tyreek Hill. Okay.
And I do think there's a tier difference between Breece Hall and James Cook, personally.
Oh, I do too, for sure. In fact, I would rank a couple of other of these names ahead of James Cook that are still down on the running back list.
So that could have gone into your decision with Breece Hall, but you instead went Tyreek Hill. Elaborate.
I mean, again, we're going to discuss this in the video today, but Tyreek Hill, I understand he was wide receiver 30 in half-point PPR scoring last year per game. But then the previous 2 years, it was wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 3. Look, the house of cards is built by Tua. If he falls down, then the whole thing crumbles. It's an uncomfortable offseason and coach speak right now involving Tyreek Hill. But man, I just can't quit it. Like, he's still playing fast enough. I know he's 31. Oftentimes we hear about the age cliff and how if you see it, it's probably already here. I don't think that that's the case with Tyreek Hill. And simply put, I believe at least a consistent running game, not to the degree that 2023 was, but at least some juice in the running game is going to impact positively the entire environment and allow Tyreek Hill to do his thing as the primary pass catcher in this offense.
Bills Zalatoris from 101 now, tacking on his 3rd quarterback as well, but starting, look at this, Lamar, Thomas, London, Prescott, and Justin Fields. Not only boxing out the heavy running back start from Z Newcomb, but securing a 3rd quarterback. Would that be an approach for you, Hayden, to get that 3rd quarterback, or would you mind pushing it if you have 2 strong starters like an Amar and Dak to begin?
Yeah, I think this is probably the earliest I would draft my 3rd quarterback. I think I would be more likely to do it if I did not have Lamar Jackson. Like if it was your 3rd, 4th, and 5th round quarterbacks, I do think that makes some sense. But typically I would probably wait till like that Anthony Richardson tier for like an upside quarterback 3, then kind of go with the 3 quarterbacks in the first 5 rounds. But I think the big difference is I probably would not do it on a Lamar team. I would probably do it on that like Drake May team, for example.
DJ Moore here is fascinating. I'm having a difficult time wrapping my head around the DJ Moore discussion right now on the Bears. And like the more I see Ben Johnson utilize him in practice, like Deebo Samuel, the more intrigued I am. But at the same time, I think he is, last on the list if we think about 2026 for this Bears team in relation to Rome Odunze and Luther Burden. I'm going to go with the player that Hayden and I have the biggest discrepancy in our rankings, Daigle. I'm going to go Rashee Rice.
Are you, I'm guessing, since you took him, higher than Hayden?
Much higher. I think about 20 spots higher. So tune into the channel if you want to have that discussion, because we're going to have it today. That's for sure.
Hayden, then explain why you are significantly lower than Josh on Rashee Rice.
He's probably going to get suspended. I would say 4 to 6 games. I think it'll be probably 6 games. I think that has to matter into the equation. He's also coming off of an injury. It sounds like he's going to be squared away, but so I do think there's a chance he finishes the season as a wide receiver 1. But Xavier Worthy also has a chance to kind of get in the mix there a little bit as well. So yeah, I would draft Rashee Rice in the 5th round. Right now his ADP is still in the later part of the 3rd round. And I'm just pretty surprised that Xavier Worthy has not really flown up draft boards. I guess people just don't really like him. I know the ETR is high on him. I'm high on Xavier Worthy, so I would rather just click Xavier Worthy and see if the runway in the first 4 to 6 games actually matters.
I believe personally there is a teardrop from CJ Stroud, who was the QB 6 in ADP last year, Jordan Love, who was the QB 8 in ADP last year, and now they are falling to this range of Superflex drafts. I think there's a teardrop, and I'm personally not going to push it with this back end needing a second quarterback. So I'm going to grab one right now, even though Devontae Adams is sitting here. And he is a player, him and George Pickens, I love to click ahead of ADP.
Yeah, Devontae Adams, I was really high on before the Stafford stuff. I guess maybe I'm a little bit more spooked on the Stafford stuff than a lot of people, but there's a difference between Stafford being out there and Stafford being healthy. So the Schefter report saying that if there was a game today, he would play it. I guess I believe that, but at the same time, you have to play 17 games, and I've watched Stafford not play well behind a very suspect offensive line where he's already immobile. And I thought last year Stafford's accuracy did decline. He still makes some unreal throws, but I did think that last year was a different version of Stafford than the couple previous seasons.
Yeah, Daigle, maybe by the time this comes out, more clarification on that. I can't tell if, there's a month before the season, if this is one of these storylines that we'll look back on in week 7 and say, why did we make such a big deal out of this Matthew Stafford mystery back injury that's the 4th time he's had one since 2019 in his career? Or if we look back on it and say, why wasn't this the biggest story in August and the entire offseason? Because it totally derailed what people's perception was of the LA Rams if he's actually injured. I mean, doesn't this have a little bit of the same juice as what we were going through with Christian McCaffrey at this point last year? It's quite similar to me.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, I still am drafting Devontae Adams. I've heard different things. The most recent podcast from our friend Greg Rosenthal also suggested that Matthew Stafford's injury, they are being very precautious with it rather than thinking it's something that's going to be serious and linger into the regular season. But you do look at his age and still question that. As I take, we're in this group of wide receivers right here. That's where I'm going to go. Travis Hunter, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Xavier Worthy, Josh. And I only say that as I take Devonta Smith. I only say that because this is a range of wide receivers. I'm basically tapping out on running back here. I'm getting out of the way, and I'm taking those wide receivers instead. I mentioned George Pickens, Rome Odunze, Jordan Addison, Jalen Waddle, for example. And I come to you for this question because I know you are targeting the older running backs, the veterans in this range who won leagues last year. So what is your thought on that grouping and tier of players and why they stand out?
Yeah, they're just a year older. They finished as top 10, top 12 scorers, or sometimes even top 5 scorers last season. They just aged, 200 days since we last saw them. Their environments are exactly the same, and yet they're going in spots that are much, much later than the impact that they had on fantasy championships and, playoff success last season. So, yeah, I mean, look, are the odds in the favor of all 4 or 5 hitting? Maybe not. Do players who touch the football a lot get injured? Yes. That's the running back position. Do I think that Chuba Hubbard, Alvin Kamara, James Conner specifically still own their backfields? 100%. And so I will take that risk in this area of the draft in comparison to a bunch of wide receivers on the board that I can poke holes in their games and in their target shares and in every single facet of their production profile this season.
What are your thoughts on that grouping, Hayden?
I'm all over it. This is a game about upside. If they repeat a version of what they did last year, you are in the driver's seat to win your league. So yeah, there's risk here, but there's also risk that all these round 4, round 5 wide receivers that we're drafting are the same 12 fantasy points per game guys that they've been for the last couple seasons. So yeah, I think that the wide receiver tier from like round 4 to round 8, I think that's also a flat tier. Like to me, there's a big drop off in the top 2 rounds of wide receivers. And then once you get to that 3rd round, all the way to round 8, we're talking about like a point or 2 points per game is the differences in projections in like year over year scoring.
Daigle, I need to take a quarterback here because, you know, there are 2 teams before me to get back on the clock that also need their second quarterback. I just see a bunch of pocket passers and Michael Penix, Tua. We've already talked about Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith. I'm swinging for the fences as my quarterback 19 in my rankings right now. I'm taking Anthony Richardson as my quarterback too.
Whenever you said the term pocket passer, I knew you were doing the exact opposite because there's one player here that was not only a top 8 quarterback in ADP last year and is now being forgotten, but is the opposite whenever he's under center.
Yep. I mean, it's really that simple. We can make the same exact case we made last year at this time for Anthony Richardson this year. And in fact, I think the words that the GM and the head coach are using for him right now are even more positive than they were last year. It seems like the benching and bringing in Daniel Jones has really gotten to Anthony Richardson in terms of implementing himself in preparation. And Daigle, I don't think anyone had their status grow without playing a single down of football than Daniel Jones in the eyes of like the football media. And then when, you know, they actually started throwing footballs, it turned out that Daniel Jones is still who he is as a player. And Anthony Richardson is just like, he's a fancy asset, man. And now I'm getting him here in a Superflex league in round 6.
We are also in the portion of Superflex drafts where everyone needs to begin thinking about the predictability of a starting quarterback versus guys like RJ Harvey, Zay Flowers, Cortland Sutton, to where they can be on the field, but it's still hard to predict their opportunity, their target share. Whereas even a quarterback, for example, like a Matthew Stafford, Michael Penix, we can project, we know they'll be starting and we can project 30 plus pass attempts per game, which is safer in some instances than some of these streaming wide receivers and running backs, which is where like the opportunity cost comes in, Hayden, as you take Bryce Young as your QB3.
Yeah, I like to have a quarterback 3 that I feel decently comfortable with. You're getting 2 weeks where he's going to be in there for the buys for your first 2 quarterbacks, plus all the injury risk. And then there's trade value in your leagues as well. So yeah, I like to go with the 3rd quarterback. I think what Josh did, going Jalen Hurts, like having an elite quarterback, and then going an upside case with Richardson paired with a Tua, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold type. Like to me, like that's probably my favorite build. But I went with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and then I went with Bryce Young because I think that the flex position, there's a huge tier of guys, and it's not going to be the case at quarterback.
I'm stuck between 2 minds here. Do I go the young pass catcher in a PPR league and RJ Harvey attached to Sean Payton? Or do I go with James Conner, who might play 13, 14, 15 games, but he's going to be the alpha of that rushing attack? I'm going to go with the latter here. I'm going to try to win this league. It's that simple.
You are
James Conner,
a James Conner guy as
well.
Oh,
yeah. Who isn't?
You are
so was
a
Jonathan
James Conner guy
Gannon,
last
so was
week
Drew
too.
Petzing. That whole team, like every single decision maker on that staff is 100% a James Conner guy.
Anthony Richardson also, as you mentioned earlier, Hayden, ETR subs here, not to mention some intelligent Superflex mockers or drafters. Anthony Richardson in a home league is probably going to go much later. So that's just someone we all universally consider to be a terrific value. And it'll be interesting to see, Josh, how you piece together your 3rd quarterback, since Anthony Richardson also not guaranteed to start throughout the year, but obviously still worth that upside shot.
I think Daniel Jones with Richardson, if that's what you want to do with your Superflex drafts, super late, go with an elite guy and then grab both the Colts guys. I've heard of worse plans out there.
There is also what's happening right now, Hayden, and you'll see this in most formats, is that Brock Bowers, McBride, Kittle, and some kind of direction in the first 3 rounds. After that, though, I would even include Sam Laporta, even though he's commonly the next guy drafted. Sam Laporta on the ADP varies widely, and I think that's because we all understand it is a extremely flat tier. And so how are you handling tight end after George Kittle?
Well, I do like the top guys, like the volume guys, Bowers and McBride in redraft leagues, because you have to, submit your lineups. You can't just ride the touchdown variance game like you can in best ball. I also like these guys in full PPR because they're getting the volume that most tight ends aren't getting. So I think McBride and Bowers are better clicks in a format like this. At the same time, Superflex, I think, devalues the tight end position even more so. So I think there's two ways to do this. Like, to me, I think the Trey McBride at 210, I think that makes some sense here. But if you kind of miss out on those guys, I would just kind of really punt this thing off.
Josh, you had mentioned something also about that tier
of tight ends. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, to me, this, if you don't get one of the top three, then like, what are we doing here? Like there's this entire middle section that, sure, one most likely is going to end up as the tight end 4, but then they also have a great chance of ending up as the tight end 14. It's why I love best ball drafting in tight ends is we Dr. Frankenstein the position at the very end, unless we get one of these true alphas at the top. Like, of course I have my favorites because we all watch players, we all do research, we all do these rankings of, the tight end 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But look, that is the position that is totally reliant on touchdowns in comparison to everything else. And that is just so unpredictable when you move off of probably Sam Laporta in this top 4 spot.
The selection of Tyreek Hill here by you is interesting because you would think in insulating the target share more and getting rid of Jonnu Smith, that Jalen Waddle would also have increased his ADP, but he does commonly go drop all the way here. Whereas I was debating personally between Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith. So I do think Jalen Waddle continues to be an extreme value. And now I also have to decide between this next group of guys. Hayden, someone who's going to be on top of ADP for a long time is Joe Mixon. And again, as drafts pick up every weekend throughout August, it is arguably the most key point, the key decision point for everyone to have. So how are you handling Joe Mixon and falling in ADP right now?
Yeah, we're trying to win our leagues, right? Upside or no? No, everyone's scared of upside because of this. Yeah, you move him down the rankings because there's injury risk. But at the same time, Joe Mixon could win your league. If he's the same player as he was last year and you're getting him in the 8th, 9th, 10th round, I think that should matter. So just kind of understand your league and figure out like what's everyone's kind of risk profile here. But at some point, it can be, if he's ready for week 1, like he would be a 5th round pick.
And unfortunately, Josh, we do not know if he'll be ready for week 1.
Correct. I am still uncertain what to do here. Like it went from, because we all have to go by at times what the National NFL Insider say. And it went from the great Adam Schefter saying he's going to be okay to 5 days later, frustrating. I don't think he uses those words lightly. And I have no idea what to do because prior to this injury happening, I was all in on Joe Mixon and a Nick Caley rushing scheme. I understand that there are major offensive line questions here, but to me, that was part of that round 5 running back group in regular redraft or your home leagues that and especially best ball, that was absolutely going to smash. But then this injury throws a wrinkle in it for sure that, again, we haven't even played games yet. And so there's that old fantasy adage of don't chase injuries because they're going to find you no matter what. And then with him, we know he's going into week 1 with an ankle injury already.
It's him and Najee Harris that will likely fall. And I also want to follow that adage. I want to be the person to avoid serious offseason injuries going into week 1. And that goes for Brandon Ayuk for me personally too. But at the same time, there's an opportunity cost here for everyone. And so how far does Mixon and Najee fall?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still not going to take him here. What I am going to do is have more of a safer quarterback option. I'm not saying that, Sam Darnold's contract is massive in comparison across the league, but I do feel like with an Anthony Richardson as my second quarterback, getting my third here with Sam Darnold is perfectly acceptable because then we go into the Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart, Daniel Jones territory. So I think Sam Darnold's a tier above those guys. And
that's why also at the end here, I picked Matthew Stafford, understanding that group of guys you mentioned who, if healthy, we are safely projecting for 17 starts. That is a different group than the others who will be drafted in Superflex leagues and should be. Jackson Dart, Daniel Jones, the list, Joe Flacco, even the list goes on, but obviously do not have the same floor or safety as the others.
So I'm back on the clock here. I only have one wide receiver through the first 7 rounds, but I got Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, Matthew Golden, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, and some other guys who I think like this is kind of the best way to play it. The guy behind me, I'm picking at the turn, has 3 receivers and 1 running back. So I think he's in line for a running back. I'm actually going to go for it. I'm going to draft Joe Mixon here and just going to play into just you have to find one more wide receiver to start here. And there are the next 30 wide receivers. I think you kind of ping pong those guys and kind of play for some breakout candidates. I think people do not understand how big of a drop only having to start 2 wide receivers are in a format like this.
You also protect Joe Mixon, pad for that injury in this case, since you have 3 players you would presumably start well before him. This next group of wide receivers, though, as Calvin Ridley, Jacoby Myers, 2 players I love in that tier, are come off the board. But where do you lean now with this next group?
Yes, it's just still a bunch of wide receivers. So I'm going to go with Steph Diggs, who I think is ranked too low at least in the sleeper default rankings here. I think there's a chance that he's going to be fully ready for week 1. And like somebody like Kyle Williams is projected to be like the 4th or 5th wide receiver to start the season. So I think that Steph Diggs could be like a great September play for me. And then I'll shoot for some upside with some rookie wide receivers down the stretch here.
Josh, do you have any favorites as you're about to be on the clock among this group that we are now going to see? Including Ricky Pearsall getting sniped from you.
Yeah, 100% Ricky Pearsall would have been on there. But I'm going to have a choice of one of these rookies. In your redraft leagues, Matthew Golden, Andy Mecca Igbuka, I think are going to be heavily, heavily underrated and underranked. I don't know if that's a perfect compliment to, Rashee Rice most likely missing 4, 5, 6 games because I need some, early season starts from someone else ahead of them. But I also think that Chris Godwin's most likely going to miss 2, 3, 4-ish games. So when I look at that, I have Emeka Egbuka as the next rookie wide receiver ranked on the board. And that's who I'm going to pick here and feel really, really good about it.
Still a strong group of wide receivers too, because Egbuka should be ranked around the Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Juwan Jennings, Matthew Golden, as you said. Do you have thoughts on how to handle Chris Godwin? Because it seems like this ankle cleanup is going to trail into the first, at the very least, couple weeks of the season.
I'm legit just not drafting him. Like, I understand we have to rank him somewhere and all that type of stuff. It's one of the most mysterious off seasons I can remember for a player, where he was offered even more money by the New England Patriots, took less money by the Bucks, and just the vibes have not been good ever since at all. Like, we're getting no buzz, nothing positive. And if that's the case, like, how can you draft him right now? And if I miss out on another explosive season, because we know that Chris Godwin is unreal when on the field, maybe I'm an idiot, but I just feel like I can work around that. And if he's the one that beats me, in the end, he's the one that beats me.
And people, Hayden, point to the last time Godwin was injured or Puka Nacua last year when he returned from injury. But we also, those are separated, in my opinion, because they're anomalies. Like, I don't want to chase an anomaly outcome for this individual who, this is still significant ADP for a Superflex league.
Yeah, I mean, he dislocated his ankle. So, like, I mean, that is a severe injury. Like, you have to break part of your leg for that to happen and tear a bunch of ligaments. He had to follow up surgery. So, like, to me, the Chris Godwin news is way more drastic than the Joe Mixon news. We don't know the Joe Mixon injury. We know for a fact Chris Godwin dislocated his ankle, and he's already had huge knee surgeries on top of it. So I think, like, to me, that's the difference with Joe Mixon, who reportedly has not had surgery. Chris Godwin's had 2 surgeries. Like, I don't think we should be putting these guys in the same bucket. And it's been interesting to me that Joe Mixon's ADP has fallen more than Chris Godwin's ADP has over the same stretch, where we know for a fact Chris Godwin has had a first-round rookie in competition and a second surgery. And on the Texans side, no surgery for Joe Mixon, absolutely no competition at running back. So I'm just like kind of perplexed by why Joe Mixon's falling much further than Chris Godwin.
I continue to back the 49ers and drafting Juwan Jennings. That was not necessarily the plan. I like a lot of these receivers, but I still like Juwan Jennings too, with that 41% target share he had with Deebo Samuel off the field last year, and just backing the Niners with the easiest schedule in the league. I also, in this range, find it interesting, not only because Chris Godwin here, again, still on the board, but because of these injuries that are happening with Joe Mixon, we are seeing naturally risers in ADP. And so Mark Andrews on the board, for example, still because of Isaiah Likely's high ankle sprain. It does seem like Andrews now, whereas we could have easily faded him. He instead seems like he could be a value at least the first month of the season. That goes also to Mike Evans, who I think you could have faded. And now it's kind of, he fits in that tier perfectly, Josh, as an offseason winner.
I mean, this entire tight end group, once again, like ever since Sam Laporta, it took 4.5 rounds for another one to be selected in TJ Hawkinson. And then, yeah, Tyler Warren, which I get all the camp hype. He's a really fun player. I still would be somewhat surprised if he gets the rushing scores that he got at Penn State now that he's attached to, you know, Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. Certainly my fantasy team that I'm drafting here would hate that tremendously. I'd be very down bad. But yeah, Tyler Warren ahead of Mark Andrews is something when like the entire Ravens red zone passing attack has been built around Mark Andrews for the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, Jacob, that tight end tier, it's interesting because TJ Hawkinson gets a boost because Addison's suspended. Travis Kelce gets a boost because Rashee Rice is suspended. And Mark Andrews gets a boost because Isaiah Likely is out. So to me, like my favorite way, like in redraft, like you can like draft a Travis Kelce and then also find a Colston Loveland. And then you can right now, some of these old guys really project better in September. And then you can take your chances on Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Colston Loveland, Mason, you name the upside guy that you want for the last half of the season. It's just ironic that like that entire tier, they get a projection boost for most of September.
In this type of format, though, you were still selecting one tight end and not a bench guy, or do you think you should select these veterans and then add someone on your bench?
I think it's fine to have a second tight end here if you're waiting until like the double-digit rounds here. It just really comes down to how deep your bench spot is, and if you need a fourth quarterback, or if you're just sticking with 3 quarterbacks and all that type of stuff. But I think it pairs well to have a Dalton Kincaid upside shot paired with a Mark Andrews who's probably going to out-project him for all of September.
It might not be an if or kind of scenario, Josh. I take Jaden Reed here. I know you were high on Matthew Golden. For Reed, who typically in home leagues goes after Golden and ADP right now, I do just cross my fingers and close my eyes and say, I saw 100 yards and a touchdown in Jordan Love's first 2 starts before Jordan Love got injured a second time mid-year. So I still take the chance here with Jaden Reed at this value.
Yeah. Listen, I'll never argue with anyone that thinks Jaden Reed is talented. He's obviously talented. It would make sense for him to run in 2 wide receiver sets for this team. I just think that we have also seen that LaFleur rotates his wide receivers constantly, and then finally has invested a first-round pick after everything was so collapsed down the field. And so I just think it's going to be Matthew Golden and then kind of a rotation of everyone else still. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Jaden Reed is awesome, though, as a football player.
Well, this is also the team that uses thresholds in the draft. Like we know that for a fact. I'm guessing that they have like sub thresholds for the positions, and that Jaden Reed is just like literally not big enough to play on the outside for their thresholds. I think like that could be like something it's like kind of that black and white. Like we know that they use that for the actual NFL draft. It would not surprise me that they use that because they know they can't put this guy on the outside.
Daigle, this is a really gross area of the draft. There's so many tight ends that it's pointless for me to breathe like the tier breaker at this point. There are no running backs I want to take. And now I regret not taking another one before this a little bit. But at wide receiver, I go Olds, or I can go either Josh Downs and Jaden Higgins. So I'm going to do the stack with Anthony Richardson and go with Josh Downs. And hopefully he can be like the early season winner for me. Whereas once Rashee Rice comes back, then boom, I have him in the flex as well.
And we'll see how much that back injury for Michael Pittman played a part in it. But we saw Josh Downs emerge in his second year with a 32% target share whenever he shared the field with Pittman too. How are you viewing Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones? Like, is there a winner based on who is under center for you?
No, I mean, I just think Anthony Richardson is a far more talented and superior football player than Daniel Jones. So everyone benefits with Anthony Richardson on the field. Like, I get it. I don't think that it's going to be as vertical of a passing game that we saw truly push to the limit that we've never seen before with Anthony Richardson under center last year, where Alec Pierce was the winner week after week after week. Look, if Richardson has done his homework this year, if he is a different player, which by all accounts he seemingly has been so far, then Josh Downs is like going to rise to the top, I think, of this wide receiver room. But at the same time, like, I think Michael Pittman's a good pick at value. There's so many of these Colts players that it does make me a little bit nervous that I'm hyping them up a bit too much in comparison to like the pure drop back passing situation that we all believe like there is possibly a ceiling to this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
It
think Cat's
does.
feeling. Oh, yeah.
And we're also seeing in this draft the opportunity cost of anchor RB builds, for example, from both the front at 101 here and Alvin Kamara, and then waiting for your next one. And then with me at the back end with Christian McCaffrey and waiting for my next one. So as we continue to move through this draft, well, at least giving examples to everyone to show what happens whenever you miss out on something like that. Whereas Hayden hammered that tier and is now picking apart Stephon Diggs as wide receiver 2. And next up, Hayden, Darnell Mooney for the Falcons offense.
Yeah, I think both these guys can be like wide receiver 3s in fantasy. So I'm not like pitching some massive upside case here, but I think both these guys have been fantasy relevant before. And then I'm going to take some shots on some rookies probably in the next couple of rounds. But I only have to start one other wide receiver behind Ladd McConkey just based off of the settings here. So I have my super flex and my flex position filled out with running backs and quarterbacks. So I'm just on the hunt for one more receiver spot.
And Josh, you did decide to be the tier breaker this time around with Colston Loveland.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Mark Andrews went off the board since my last one. Travis Kelce, Evan Ingram. Look, all those guys have been great fantasy scorers in the past. I decided to take the next great fantasy score in Colston Loveland. Again, maybe a bit of a slower start, but Colston Loveland changes the fabric of a passing game. Ben Johnson, we just saw coach up a rookie season, tight end 1 season with Sam Laporta a couple years ago. I, maybe speaking out of turn here, am unconcerned about Cole Kmet as the season goes along and into the future. And I think Colston Loveland is going to emerge as one of the top targets for Caleb Williams in this passing offense pretty soon.
We're now getting to this group of running backs where I have to have a second starter. So I need serviceable touches. I can't just start reaching for sleepers just yet. So I am going to personally scroll down and target Tank Bigsby as, so far, in my opinion, a training camp winner based on all the reports. I do still worry a little bit that LaQuint Allen did profile as a pass catching back, and so everyone discusses it as a 3 running back backfield whenever it's actually 4. But if anything, Tank Bigsby showed us he is the best early down pure runner in that backfield last year. How are you handling, Josh, the Jaguars backfield at this time?
Oh, since May, Hayden can tell you, I've been taking Tank Bigsby over and over and over and over again. He was the cheapest at one point. I went back, during the season, after the season, and watched Tank Bigsby versus Travis Etienne. It was a no contest between who was a better running back on the field last year in terms of explosiveness, in terms of a pure ball carrier. Liam Cohen's even smarter than me. I bet he went back and watched the same thing and saw that Tank Bigsby was a better ball carrier than Travis Etienne. I don't know what to think of Bashal Tutin. He has his pros. He has his cons. In the end, I'm sure it'll be split, chopped, and changed in a whole bunch of different roles and scenarios. There's not going to be one, I doubt, Bucky Irving that emerges from this backfield. So, it's been fun all summer to draft Tank Bigsby as the cheapest one in this backfield. That's for sure.
Do you have a favorite tier break option getting back to tight ends, Hayden, as Josh took Loveland? Then we see Njoku, my personal favorite, who will talk trash on your children, Tucker Kraft, at the back end here. Do you have a personal favorite if you were to have waited at tight end rather than taking someone like Travis Kelce here?
Maybe it's Tucker Kraft. He's like full-time player down the stretch for them. Even when Musgrave returned, he's good at the game. It's a good offense. I do have some interest in Dalton Kincaid, just looking at the Bills need him to step up. There's contractual reasons on why they would like push the envelope with him to see what they have there. And there's theoretical upside with him. And then like what Josh said, Colston Loveland, I'm not expecting it to be in September. But I think by the end of the season, he could separate himself as being like a total stud. So I think that tier is pretty flat as well. I am getting kind of nervous about the David Njoku stuff, if I'm being honest, who I've loved. It just seems so bad in Cleveland right now, and they're talking up Harold Fandon to some degree.
This flat tier of running backs, Josh, that I'm trying to pick through, Ray Davis would have also been an option. I'm still questioning if James Cook will actually hold out or miss any significant amount of time. I go Dylan Sampson for the Browns backfield, but is there anyone that stands out among this group?
I'm just nervous about the Browns in general.
Sure.
Hayden, I would even point to, if I was to draft any of them at cost, it would probably be David Njoku, because I know that, a Stefanski passing game is going to incorporate the tight end. I asked this question a few weeks back of, I listened to fantasy football content, and I'm guilty of this too, at some point, like all of these Browns players have been hyped up, including Cedric Tillman, including Jerry Jeudy. At one point, it was Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson, all these guys, right? This is the team that's projected for, literally the fewest amount of points in the NFL this season and have just major questions. So like maybe Dylan Sampson emerges. I thought at one point when this team spent an early second round pick on Quinshon Judkins, that they were going to go back to the Baker Mayfield era of a Stefanski offense where it would be ground focused, right? And bring in a new offensive line coach, all that type of stuff. I wonder how it's going to unfold now. Like some people, Hayden liked Dylan Sampson a lot more than me. Let's put it that way. So I'm slightly nervous about all this.
Yeah.
Hayden, and I know it's a hard backfield. It's hard.
It's just going to be bad.
Yeah,
be terrible.
It's going to
Dylan Sampson is going to be like RB 33 in rankings when Quinshon Judkins is not out there, and the 0 RB guys are going to be like, "Wow, this is awesome," and then they're going to come in 9th place.
To be fair, I had 2 running backs. So Dylan Sampson and a couple other bums are about to get added to this roster anyways. It's also, it's the point about discussing like that group of running backs in home leagues. I think guys like Jaden Blue here, Cam Scatterboo, maybe, but I think they also will take Bigsby even. I think they'll fall a little later. And so Jaden Blue, I think, will be someone I'm targeting, even though the winner is probably still the Cowboys passing game, Josh, as you're on the clock.
Dago, it's fascinating when you go through different roster constructions, right? And how just the settings are. I think Hayden really did this correctly with early 3 running backs, because for the rest of the draft, you're going to feel so much better about every single wide receiver pick that's on the board than running back pick. I mean, right now I'm looking at, J.K. Dobbins versus Michael Pittman or Rashid Shaheed. Like I want Rashid Shaheed on my team, know, and I can't do it right now because I have so many wide receivers. So instead, I'm going to take Tajay Spears. I like him. I like Ramondre Stevenson. I'm going to go towards the pass catching aspect of this. We've also seen when Tony Pollard misses time, Tajay Spears is a legit awesome player. He's makes you miss, electric in terms of phone booth stuff. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping in this case that like talent rises to the top and the opportunities given to him.
And Tony Pollard, although he outplayed Spears as a workhorse, surprisingly last year, the pass catching shot still weren't there. So it could be Spears still to emerge in a secondary role. That's kind of how I feel about Zach Charbonnet, honestly, too, as he sits here at the top. Kenneth Walker now missing multiple practices. That's kind of been Kenneth Walker's MO, even though I love Kenneth Walker. But because he's so physical, that it does seem to open the door with a new offensive coordinator, a new offense in general, for Zach Charbonnet to provide value at this range.
Yeah, I definitely like Zach Charbonnet. But there's a lot of like Tyler Algier types that go multiple rounds later. So most of my drafts look like the one I'm doing now, where I have Breece Hall, James Cook, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, and then you guys can figure out your ambiguous backfields. I'll just keep winning the flex as long as these guys stay healthy. And then in the meantime, I really wanted Rashid Shaheed. I got sniped there. So I'll pivot. I'll just kind of see what happens with Cooper Kupp. But I do think when you have 2 wide receivers, I think punting or 2 wide receivers to start, I would rather just punt this thing off. And I have like 5 guys to throw out the position in the double-digit rounds.
In this type of format as well, the opportunity cost of waiting on a third quarterback is being shown from 104 Berg and then the 112 back here. That does get a strong start and at least gets these 2 quarterbacks. Again, if we're talking about a flat tier in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, but waiting beyond that, we are now looking at whoever is after Tyler Shuck. So I guess Jackson Dart and probably will reach.
Berg has been eliminated. Let's be honest. The 4th team has been eliminated from the league. They can join next year. It was a great run at it. What is to me, what is Jaylen Warren doing for this team? What is Trey Harris doing for this team? Like he should have been drafting some quarterbacks before this point.
All right, Daigle, at this point with running backs, I am just taking personal favorites and just believing that once they get the opportunity, they're going to be good on an NFL field. So I'm going to take Ray Davis here. I think Ray Davis is a heck of a football player. I was not expecting James Cook to dominate. Finally, red zone inside the 10-yard line work last year. It was an anomaly in comparison to the rest of his Bills career. It's why he got so many fancy points. Prior to that, he's been a good player for Buffalo, but it was always between the 20s. Look, I'm not saying that James Cook is going to lose his status and maybe they get a new contract on this year, not at the money maybe he's asking for at this moment. But Ray Davis, when you go back and watch him, he can do it all. We saw in the games that when, again, he was taken over as the running back one,
the Jets,
then, I mean, just to the moon, a top 5, top 10 scorer at the position. And he kind of profiles differently than James Cook. Like, who's to say that he doesn't carve out a role on this team? And that might be inside the 10, inside the 5 on top of it. So look, people might have gotten mad when we were around 7 that I took James Conner, but I have 2 guys here that if James Conner misses time, I don't take zeros for him. You know, I'm going to fill in the gaps with another player, and I'm hoping that that lines up with either Ray Davis starts or Tajay Spears starts.
I should have took Ray Davis over Dylan Sampson. I love Ray Davis. And I was debating him in that pick, which tells you he probably should be going slightly earlier, if only because, as you said, we did see the elite contingency value if he were asked to ever play in place of James Cook, who is currently going a hold-in at camp. I'm just going to click my little Austin Eckler receptions here because I'm just trying to fill in RB2 production
pod
right now, making his rounds. And this back end, Hayden, yes, you said that that's how you want to live. Like, you want to now take these wide receivers who do have significant value. We can project them easier than the group of running backs. Are there some favorite wide receivers these last couple of rounds that you want people walking away with in their drafts?
Yeah, to me, it's closer to like this Rashid Shaheed, Darnell Mooney tier than like kind of punting things off at the very end of drafts. Like, my favorite like last round guy is Darius Slayton, but not really for PPR or for redraft. That's more of a best ball selection. So to me, like, I think once you get to like around pick 100, like that's when like the real projectable volume kind of drops off. Your Jaden Higgins types, I think like those are valuable upside plays. But all those guys kind of sit at like 100th overall and not like 150th.
I'm going to continue rounding it out here with, as you said, a bunch of Tyler Algiers. So as long as he's not picked before me, it really makes sense to add him to this build. Josh, like you said, Hayden is doing this correctly.
So am I. I like my team a lot.
Let's look at it in whole. Waiting for the second quarterback, but still piecing together 3. And now, similar, you have 2 strong running backs, but similar, piecing together those last couple of running backs in the last rounds.
I love this team. I mean, Jalen Hurts, Nico Collins, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, Rashee Rice, who, you know, I think could be a top 10 scorer at the position once he comes back, and there's my flex spot in a full PPR league. Then James Conner, rookie and Emeka Egbuka might be the rookie wide receiver 1 at the end of the season. You know, I think there's potential there. Josh Downs, Colson Loveland at tight end, then Tajay Spears and Ray Davis, and I'm not done at that position either. So
I think real quick on the Rashee Rice stuff, I think this applies to Joe Mixon. These guys that are projected to miss time, they're actually more valuable in your redraft leagues because like 6 out of the 12 teams make the playoffs, where the barrier to make the playoffs in best ball is to the top 2 out of 12. So like you only have to come in like what most leagues are 6 out of 12. Sometimes it's only 4 out of 12 make the playoffs. They're just it's a lower bar to clear in your redraft league, taking some zeros from some of your early round picks.
Damn, I was going to take Braylon Allen there. I'll close with that with like my final running back pick that I absolutely love, and it's Jalen Wright.
Yep, that's a good
Go for it. Explain.
I mean, again, we get so focused on what just happened this past season, and what just happened this past season for the Miami Dolphins was they literally couldn't block anyone, both the inside and the outside. Prior to that, they had 2 top 4 scoring running backs, you know, and that was Devon Achane and that was Raheem Mostert. Now, Mostert did a lot of his work inside of the 10-yard line. If we listen to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Wright's going to get more of that work than Devon Achane, you know, but I think Jalen Wright also has juice, also has burst. I'm not saying he is a perfect running back out there, but again, if this team just goes from awful blocking to average blocking, that is going to be so massive to the rushing success of this team. And to me, the clear running back 2 is Jalen Wright on that offense. And the gap is so like he was drafted earlier last offseason than he is this offseason.
With more opportunity.
Yes.
With a wider open backfield.
Yes. So he's an easy pick for me right now in all formats.
I asked Hayden the question, but for you, do you have any favorite sleepers? Everyone's favorite question here. In the last couple rounds as you're finally on the clock.
I mean, all these wide receivers are pretty gross. In a full PPR league, I really don't want to go Marvin Mims. I'm not a Mims head. No Cedric Tillman. No Panthers. I kind of want to go Josh Palmer.
Interesting.
Go Josh Palmer.
Yeah, to me, this is where like the wide receiver cliff happens. Like I think Rashad Bateman looks a lot better than like the rest of the wide receiver group. So it's one of the positions where I do think the drop off is pretty substantial once you get to a certain point.
Yeah, and then now at tight end, like I can go Brenton Strange here, and get a second tight end. But typically in redraft, I don't go with second tight ends. Hayden, what would you pick?
Oh man, probably a running back dart throw for your team.
Well, there are none.
Or a tight end. Chigga.
Too late. I went Josh Palmer.
That works.
The Khalil Shakir injury, like when we discussed Rashee Rice or Joe Mixon, Rashee Rice, though, it's a suspension, so he comes back healthy. Joe Mixon, there's always the concern that perhaps he's not even healthy when he's on the field and playing, and so we're starting him and he's bringing our team down. But the Josh Palmer opening, like the Khalil Shakir injury, does seem like it also could open a window here a couple weeks for someone else to stand out. Josh Palmer is not that slot guy. I think that'd be Elijah Moore, right? In between Keon Coleman.
I mean, Josh Palmer's played the slot too. I think they would just use Dalton Kincaid. I think it would just be like, we're going,
like
Dalton Kincaid's our guy.
Hayden woke up one day this summer and became a Kincaid guy. It's puzzling to me, but
that is odd.
Happened.
I looked at the ADP. Hey, I'm looking at the Bills guys. Josh Allen, we take him in the third round. They're projected for the most points, and we pick nobody else on the team. Maybe that's wrong.
It really confused me. We've been anti-Kincaid this entire time, but I get it. Like, again, we shouldn't just keep our biases. Like, there's no reason for me to hammer and beat a dead horse while he's down in Kyle Pitts this offseason. Like, that is just totally baked into his ADP, you know? So at this point, we should probably shift our focus and then talk about the upside case of these guys, because they do have upside cases, you know?
And that's what we're doing with a lot of quarterbacks anyways, and other positions, is saying, look at the ADP last year and look at it this year. And Dalton Kincaid now has fallen. Whereas, again, if we talk about this tier of tight ends, like, who's to say Dalton Kincaid does not outscore David Njoku, Colston Loveland, Evan Ingram? So yeah, sure. As one of these last round players, why not? As I rounded out with Will Shipley, 12-team Superflex in the books. Hayden, your thoughts overall on what people should take away from the front of drafts?
Yeah, so if you're picking, your spot, I would go with one of the elite quarterbacks and pick one of the top 4 or 5 spots in drafts. I have Josh Allen. I went with Patrick Mahomes and then Bryce Young. So I like having like a stable third quarterback, even though I had the 2 studs out there. And then I think that, to me, my strategy was there's only 2 starting wide receivers. So let's actually push that. I went with the Joe Mixon upside shot instead of going with a wide receiver. And then I have to figure out Diggs, Mooney, Pittman, Kupp, Rashad Bateman. I need to pick one starter every week for the rest of the season out of those names, plus whoever kind of pops up on the waiver wire.
Josh, you seem to have navigated the middle of a Superflex draft healthily.
Oh, I nailed it. I love this team. I mean, the quarterbacks of Jalen Hurts, and then I still get the rushing upside that if he's successful and when he has great weeks, Anthony Richardson can be a top 7 scorer at the position. And then if he doesn't work out and he gets benched, they would go over and pivot to Sam Darnold. So I have the Superflex covered. At running back, Jonathan Taylor and James Conner, bell cows, dynamic, own their backfields. If one or both of them miss time, then I have upside guys that I like that I'm not going to take zeros in Tajay Spears, who has a role in his offense, Ray Davis, Jalen Wright, who has a role in his offense too. And then at wide receiver, again, full PPR, Nico Collins. I think there's an outside shot. He's a top 2 or 3 scorer at the position. He's just like arguably a top 6 wide receiver talent in the NFL, you know? Tyreek Hill. Then as Rashee Rice is suspended and working back, because I do think he can be a top 10 scorer once he does return, I get Josh Downs or Josh Palmer, or heck, even Emeka Egbuka, who's going to be starting week 1 for his team. And then I've put my chips in the tight end basket of Colston Loveland. And if that doesn't work out, then I can get someone like Brenton Strange on waivers.
I am a risk-averse individual in the back end and will be grinding the waiver wire in any other draft. And so I don't mind taking on the last round running backs and piecing it together, understanding most of them will be cut in a redraft league. But I would probably suggest to anyone watching this in the back end, you can understand the range where you should go away. In this case, probably Juwan Jennings and Jaden Reed, and instead eat one of these players that will be more of a viable starter, like a Jaylen Warren, Jordan Mason, or Zach Charbonnet in that place. Josh,
Jacob, real quick.
Yeah.
Real quick. You are in the most difficult spot of a Superflex league.
Yes.
I think you navigated it greatly in terms of the quarterback position with Purdy and Stroud.
Mm-hmm.
I am so in on Brock Purdy this year in terms of how terrible that offense was last year from an environmental standpoint. So many injuries, including missing Trent Williams for 7 games. They still scored the 14th most points in the league last year. They have easily the easiest schedule in 2025. And they are more likely, I think, to finish as a top 4 scoring team in the league this year.
Yep.
And Brock Purdy, he will see far more single high coverage than the 2 high stuff that he saw last year without CMC on the field. So Brock Purdy is my favorite of these like pure pocket passers, even if he adds, 4 points per game with his rushing. And then CJ Stroud, again, I understand the offensive line is a big question. It was brutal last year in terms of picking up twists and stunts and unblocked pressures. I think we all have an issue and difficulty predicting what it's like with new play callers and everyone joining an offense. And Nick Caley can do wonders, I think, with this team, and they're going to allow CJ Stroud to have more responsibility. So while you didn't get any mobile necessarily guys, first and foremost, the combo of Purdy and Stroud, I do like in that territory a lot.
From the back end too, since their ADPs will be different, if you are drafting like this, like you said, I like Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and Drake May. Go another round to the turn. I like CJ Stroud and Jordan Love. Go another round then, and I like Michael Penix and Anthony Richardson. I think that's how I am prioritizing that grouping of quarterbacks from the back end, since you will not get one of the top 4 guys. Josh, tell everyone where they can find all the videos you hinted at throughout this show and shameless plugs.
Yeah. Hopefully I did that a couple times. Just go and search Underdog Football Show on YouTube. This week we had 4 episodes. Next week it's 5, plus like all of the preseason rankings changes based on, preseason games. So there's so much content. There's basically 1 per day that you can find. And if there's not enough, go back into the vault and find plenty more from the off season. It's that simple.
Hayden, you're on the same YouTube channel, but you're also writing a lot as well.
Yes, I am. Take notice, Josh. Not that many people read in 2025, but for those that still know how to do it, I will write some words for the people.
The early bird sale at establishtheRun.com, still available for a limited time. Just go to the website, select on the subscriptions tab, and scroll down from there for more info. Until then, thanks to the boys at Underdog for joining us. We will be back next week with another mock draft. And until then, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.